welcome to the Green Room. My name is Frederick Olsen, and I'm sitting here comfortably in my bathtub, joined by my two good friends, Trolls Plymouth, the Space Quest historian.
Hello.
And Dr. Gareth Millwood.
Hello.
And what could possibly go wrong from sitting in a bathtub at the ripe age of 27, sniffing what I think is cocaine, but the pusher kind of mumbled, so I'm not actually sure what this is entirely. I'm sure there won't be any negative consequences. So, Trolls, you seem to be the man with the idea of why we're doing this. What did you want to discuss at this perfect moment for me to die?
Oh, well, that is exactly what I wanted to get at. I think we should get something out of the way before, because Fred's birthday is actually next week, and I think we should get something constructive done before he inevitably passes off this mortal coil. So please, since he's due any moment now to be floating upside down in a bathtub, Jim Morrison style, let's just... Oh, good. Let's get something out of the way that we didn't have time for on the main show, because we really got into it, and it was a good show, I believe. A thing I wanted to bring up was alternative history stories. For some reason, Quentin Tarantino springs instantly to mind with Inglourious Bastards and stuff like that, where you could take a period from history and then knowingly and completely knowingly turn it on its head and screw everything up, and that gets you past the problem of trying to stay within the confines of historical accuracy. It gets you past the problems of portraying people in accidentally in the wrong light to some people, and you can basically just take it and run with it. You couldn't say that it's based on a true story, which actually I do believe Inglourious Bastards opens with based on a true story, doesn't it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's it. It was that typical kind of narrative kind of styling that's been gone for generations. You could go back to the mythology of the Greek gods, and they made this argument that this really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I also wouldn't use Tarantino as much of an example, because everything he does is so highly stylized that I'm sure it says based on a true story for a clear-cut reason.
Yeah, and everyone knows it's not based on a true story. But you could ostensibly go, say, if Kennedy wasn't assassinated, just to bring up an example that we covered on the main show, go into a world where Kennedy wasn't assassinated, and then all these horrible things come to light about his personality. I mean, he already had the Bay of Pigs under his wing. It wasn't a terribly, prominent success, and he did have this reputation as a womanizer and such. And if he'd stayed in power, I mean, there are a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, Gareth, but there are a lot of historians who agree that if he hadn't been assassinated, he wouldn't have gone down as a particularly successful president.
It certainly helped.
That was the
best.
Which
is an awful thing to say.
Yeah, that's actually awful, but it may have been the best thing that ever happened to him. Of course,
that was even more awful.
The most fascinating alternate history thing out there is, of course, what if Hitler won? It's also kind of... everyone's done it. It's been done, but of course, that's the main thing. That was the historical event where there was most potential for the world to really take a 180-degree turn.
Is it called the Man in the High Castle? Is that the book and the TV series? Yeah. No, carry on, Trolls. I will get to my rant later.
Oh, yeah, sure. But I was just thinking, you wouldn't necessarily even have to set it in a cataclysmic event like the Second World War or like the Manhattan Project, which ended up, bombing Japan to shit. You could set it in a historical framework where you just have this... as a person who was a part of history, you now play as this character who acts in direct opposition of how he is usually portrayed in historical texts. Like look at like Shakespeare in Love, for instance, where they took massive liberties with the character of Mozart. Sorry, Shakespeare. Sorry, there were two different. Because I was two different movies were colliding in my head right there.
Amadeus.
Amadeus, that's the one. But both of
Amadeus Shakespeare.
Yeah, Mr. Amadeus Shakespeare. Both of those movies took amazing amounts of liberties with the characters themselves for, of course, plots, plot contrivances and all that. But you could do the same with an adventure game. I mean, pit someone, because adventure games like mystery, of course. You could take a known serial murder case and pit the detective who solved it as a person who's unable to solve it, or probably even more interestingly, a person who was unable to solve it, who now then solves it. Okay, yeah. Over to you, Gareth.
I'm coming at this as a professional historian, so
really,
yeah. No, I want to put all the caveats out there because I understand why.
Oh, good, I love caviar.
Shut up. Let me get back in the bath.
That's what the Patreon fund is there to keep Fred quiet.
Glub, glub, glub.
Not that Coke is a good drug to keep somebody quiet. Anyway, so I'm coming at this as a professional historian. I understand why counterfactual histories are intriguing to people. That kind of basic question of what if something had happened differently, I think is basic to human experience, because we understand our lives as a story, and we all have, there are people that say they have no regrets, and I like to think I'm a person that has no regrets, but we all think back on our life and think, when I was getting bullied, what if I'd said this to that person? Or when I said this to a girl I liked, what if I'd actually done something different? Maybe I would have got a better outcome of that. I mean, that is one of the ways in which we learn about the world, and we try to, within our own heads, become the people that we want to be. And some of us get more trapped in those kind of self-referential and deep depressive cycles than others, obviously.
And nostalgic cycles, to kind of relate it to last week's topic.
Well, there's the movie Butterfly Effect, which is essentially about a guy who gets to relive choices in his past.
Alternate title: Ashton Kutcher gets us up the ass.
Alternate title: Ashton Kutcher is actually a good actor in this one. Who would have thought?
It's pretty decent.
Was he having his reconnaissance?
No, apparently he just woke up next to Fred's bathtub, not Gareth's bathtub. What's he doing in your tub instead of in it?
I don't share the tub.
It's the sharing economy.
Right. No, anyway,
it's like Airbnb, but for
and the water in here is really cold. It's not doing me a whole lot of favors, if you know what I mean.
Well played, sir. You've earned that.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
Thank you.
But I know what you're coming from, Gareth. The what if? I mean, everyone looks back on their lives and thinks, I could have done something different, and how would my life have shaped like this? There is. I will let you finish. Again, I'm going Kanye West here. There is an episode of Red Dwarf, which is my favorite sitcom of all time. Where Arnold Rimmer, the perpetual numbskull of the series, meets his alternate identity from a different dimension. The conceit is that with every decision you make, the alternate decision is played out in a different reality. So there's an infinite amount of realities where all the decisions are played out. And one crucial decision that Arnold Rimmer did was to choose to move up a class instead of stay behind for a year. And staying behind for a year meant that he had to buckle down and get his shit together. And then, many years later, he meets this alternate personality of his, and he's this swashbuckling, slick hair, jovial kind of guy's guy. Everyone just goes, "What a guy!" It's a running joke. Yeah. And
smoke me a kipper. I'll be back for breakfast.
Exactly. That's his catchphrase. I love that. That's a real prime example of the what if idea. But now I've completely ruined your thunder. Please reclaim it.
No, I actually thought you were going to be talking about the Tika to Ride episode from Series 7, the one good episode from Series 7, where they realise that actually JFK needs to die. with all those caveats about, I understand why it makes a good narrative for entertainment, and I don't want to take away from that. But one of the real one of the stars of counterfactual history, at least in the early 90s, was a guy called Niall Ferguson, who has done a number of television shows. He's a Harvard professor. He's a cunt. And the problem with him is
that's not a professional title, is it?
It's not a professional title, but I think if you asked most historians of my political bent, they would agree with me. He
majored in history. He minored in cunt.
Yeah, you would endorse him on LinkedIn for cuntery.
He was a big supporter of the George W. Bush regime. He thinks that Thatcher and Reagan are his personal heroes. He believes that history is this inevitable march of progress. He is an apologist for the worst excesses of the British Empire. He's an arsehole, but he is very, very popular because he tells very good stories. And one of the ways that he has in the past at least told very good stories is to write a series of essays of what if certain historical events had gone a different way? Like, what if Churchill had lost the Second World War in 1942? What would have happened to Europe? What would have happened to the rest of the world?
Cunts have it easy. I mean, Jimmy Savile was appealing to children on air, whereas off air, children were appealing to him.
Okay,
yeah, he wasn't into hair. He really wasn't.
He was into pretty much everything, so he probably was into hair.
I need to make a legal disclaimer that I do not think that Niall Ferguson is as bad as Jimmy Savile.
No, but I know exactly what you mean. When I was at university, we had to do a paper on the Second World War, as I believe every university student has to do a paper on the Second World War at some point.
I dropped out before we had to do that.
We ran across this absolute cunt named David Irving, who I'm sure, Gareth, you've heard of.
I've done a podcast on him before. He's an awesome. Yeah. He's an arsehole.
He's a Holocaust denier. He was fun to read in the same sense that being a detective investigating child pornography rings is fun.
It's kind of interesting because Holocaust denier is actually synonymous with cunt.
Yeah, pretty much.
If you want to read anything about that, read Richard Evans's book. Richard Evans was a Cambridge professor. He retired about a year ago, actually, and he gave expert testimony in a court case which Irving brought against a Jewish academic who accused him of Holocaust denial and being a liar and fabricating evidence. And Richard Evans went into the court and said, "Well, I'm an expert on German history from about like 1920 through to like 1980 or something like that." And he said, I've read a lot of these original documents that he talks about, and and he was able to make this case that if you only select the sources that Irving selects, you can tell this story about Hitler not knowing about the Holocaust, or the Holocaust being this idea, but he never actually said it should really happen. And you can make that argument if you ignore.
Did we lose the doctor?
I think the doctor may have lost all train of thought because he's still in here. I was really dying to see what it is you gain if you ignore something.
Yeah, and I'm really worried that he was
really getting worked up.
Yeah,
we lost him before a climax.
Oh damn! I hate when that happens. Are you absolutely sure he's not in your bathtub?
No, I think we're losing him. So let's fall back to what we always fall back to, and let's talk about sound design.
Oh god, no. Maybe we should just snippy play the Monty Python waiting theme and wait until he reconnects.
Well, he's the guy who plays the Monty Python waiting theme, so there's a problem. I can sing it for you if you want.
Oh, please do.
I'll be stuck doing this for a while.
Yeah. He
Poor,
fell
poor
out.
Gareth. Well, this is the first time during season 3 we've actually had major technological issues, isn't it?
Well, it is the UK. You never
And it
know.
had to happen. It had to happen at some point. And it had to be Mullet ruining it. We'll probably never find out what he was going to say about, what happens if you ignore something. But
Oh, he's gonna reconnect soon enough.
well, I can die an unfulfilled man in my bathtub now.
Yeah, see now you have to stay alive. Now you have to now you have to bear it. Please put down the razor blade and the CD of Base Hunter and
And the sawed off shotgun.
You brought that into the bath? How does that work?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to combine all of the things at once.
You're just the worst adventure game hero ever. Like, all right, we've got a cutting board, we've got a bag of cocaine, we've got a bathtub, we've got a razor blade, we've got a shotgun. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, wouldn't it be spectacular if you could combine all of those? You missed out the bottle of Southern Comfort, incidentally, which would be Janis Joplin.
Ah, yes, and I also forgot setting something on fire and then dying in your own vomit, Jimi Hendrix style.
Well, it's better at least than dying in someone else's vomit.
Yeah, certainly, I'll give you that one. Can we actually think of historical people who have died in vomit other than Jimi Hendrix?
John Bonham died in his own vomit.
Really, he did?
He did.
Oh, poor guy.
He'd been drinking heavily during his last day. They were heading to the studio and they stopped at it was England, so it wasn't a diner, but they stopped at a place to eat where he just sat with a ham and chewed on it and downed shots of vodka going breakfast, and he just kept drinking throughout the day. And Jimmy Page put him in the bed and tried to place him in a good position. And by the morning, on the side thing. Yeah, by the morning he was dead.
Jeez, well, that's horrible.
Yeah.
And what's also horrible, but not nearly as horrible, is the fact that Gareth has now tried to reconnect 3 times, and it still doesn't seem to be working at all.
Well, it's the story of most of my sex life.
Are you recording, incidentally? Because I know Gareth was.
I am recording, yeah. And as you know, my recordings turn out to be pretty fucking spectacular, so have no fear.
I am completely non-fearing at this point.
Of course,
my flesh noodle is completely and utter. It could cut glass.
Now that I have said that, of course, my recording will fail. And I love that Gareth is just sending us question marks on all social media. He's sending us question marks here on Skype. He's sending us question marks here on Facebook. Twitter probably coming up soon. My call dropped. Not sure what's going on. Well, truth be told, Mr. Millett, we're not quite sure either. He's online again, so I think I may try to add him. And please, let's not edit any of this out, because are there more fascinating things than British celebrities drowning in vomit? Speaking of vomit, here he is. Hello, Gareth.
What happened?
We have no idea. You just disappeared on us.
Oh.
I'm very sorry. You were getting to a very good bit, and I don't
your internet has more holes in it than Blackpool. But now they know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert hole. I'd love
and there he went again.
turn you on. I'm going under the water here. Glop, glop, glop.
What?
Oh, he's still there. Good.
I'm still here. I'm just completely bemused by what's going on. I don't know where I was.
We talked a bit about
trying to fill time.
We talked a bit about Club 27, which I'm about to enter.
We're just rattling off celebrities who've died in their own vomit, just to pass the time.
And we thought we thought you'd join the statistic. To be honest,
yeah, we're really concerned about your bathtub.
Oh, my bathtub's fine, I think.
You have a bathtub, you lucky shit.
I don't use it.
Not a euphemism.
Really, you
Not-
don't. You have a bathtub and you don't use it. If I had a bathtub, I'd go full on Douglas
Yeah,
Adams
if
on
I-
your
if
ass.
I
I
had
would be
a-
in
if-
that bathtub from 9 to 7.
Absolutely. If I had a bathtub, I would lay down, fill it with water and lay down of it, if only to see the bubbles rise when I fart.
I would prune like a motherfucker. Oh, I'm sorry, Gareth. You were saying something incredibly interesting that we were really hoping that you'd
Gareth,
finish.
what is it we're going to ignore? What
Oh, I
is
don't.
it?
I don't know how we're going to stitch this together.
We're
We're
not.
not.
We're actually going to
this-
end on. We are actually
this is
going to
the
end on your
episode, is it?
rant. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, basically, my point is that historians at least like to believe that what we do is based on evidence, and therefore counterfactual histories are not proper history. And I can understand why people engage in them, and they're a fun kind of thing to do. And I suppose to a certain extent, all historians, whenever you're trying to make a judgment on the
Hashtag
decisions,
all historians.
hashtag not all historians. When you're trying to make a judgment on what people did and why they did them, you're always thinking about the choices they could have made and didn't. But we like to think, at least from an academic sense, you would find it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to publish an article based on what could have happened in a particular moment, or
Certainly not in
would have
academic
happened.
circles. Oh,
Yeah.
definitely not. Because it is ostensibly fantasy. It is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It is pretty much make believe, which would make for good literature. I mean, good like fictional literature, which is why I brought it up in the sense of adventure games. But of course, not in
Absolutely.
academic circles.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, there's different ways you can go about it as well. I mean, you talk about alternative histories and alternative stories. Well, we've already talked in previous episodes about alternative endings. I mean, there's nothing to suggest that the in inverted commas, in quotation marks, the right ending might be what actually happened in history, but maybe there are other endings that you can choose to have happen. So in that sense, maybe you can take control of a historical
Maybe sometimes
figure.
in the long run, the alternate endings would have been more desirable than what actually happened.
Well,
And what could
it's
be
not-
what could be really interesting, and maybe this is my closing spiel. I say maybe is
This means that there's at least an hour to go, people.
Fett as bitches.
I'm pruning up in this motherfucker.
Ooh, I would so dearly love to prune. Anyway, what I think could be the soundboard hasn't been featured nearly enough in this this week. I feel, but no. What I was getting at was that you could have an adventure game where let's say the ending of the story, as it would be in a historical context, would actually happen in the middle of the game, and then you would see just how that decision played out. Let's just say, for instance, the assassination of JFK. The assassination of JFK is not at the end of the game. It's not you trying to prevent Oswald from shooting him or whoever did, or trying to find out who
It
was the
Oswald.
yeah, if it was the
Well, the
grassy
shot
knoll.
came
it
from
was
the grassy
Oswald.
knoll.
Move on.
Well, right.
The shot came from the glassy moor.
It happens in the middle of the game, and then the rest of the game is basically one huge branching path where in one instance he lives and you sort of have to deal with that. In another instance he dies and you have to deal with that. In one instance, both Oswald and JFK dies or whatever. I mean, you could have tons of fun of having a game where the cataclysmic event doesn't happen at the end.
That's the
happens in the middle.
tagline on the box right there. Tons and tons of fun. The JFK assassination, the adventure game.
And that somehow became even more tasteless than JFK Reloaded. I am a genius.
I'd be interested in that kind of game from a kind of if you spoke to historians and talked about the social pressures at the time, and you talked about the other characters that were around at the time, and you could at least build some kind of plausible alternative realities based on the other kind of historical currents that were going on at the time. I think that would be a very interesting game, providing that it was always presented as this is an interesting take on it, and providing that we did, like we were saying in the episode, doing those kind of things where you're actually exploring the deeper social cultural histories within that world through the non-playable characters and through the objects and all that kind of stuff.
You're trying to get into the setting that you're in.
Just as long as you don't say that it's based on a true story, I'm happy with that.
Oh, definitely. We can totally agree on that. If you're doing alternate history, don't be Quentin Tarantino. Don't go based on a true story when you know for a fact it is not.
Well, I think Quentin Tarantino is trying to say something else, to defend him. I think it's a send-up. It's a huge piss take when he has that written in the credits of Inglourious Bastards.
It probably is.
But
anyway,
none
of you out there are as clever as Quentin Tarantino apparently is.
Get enough of your games, Babushka Mailbox.
Yeah, Quentin Tarantino, you fucking Babushka Mailbox. Well, do so ironically, I would say, if it's warranted, but don't do it seriously. I agree with you guys there.
Oh yeah, definitely. You're absolutely right, and I was wrong.
And on that bombshell, say Wumble Trolls.
Womble.
Say Wumble, Gareth.
Womble.
And it's a Wumble from me as well.
Happy Easter.
Happy Ishtar.
Happy Ishtar. Fuck me! I can't remember who.
I think that was actually the ending of it. We're done now.
All right, cool.
And the reason I really cut you off is that I need to go have a piss. So if you'll excuse me.
Good times.
# not all pissers. Not all